Smoke rises across the distant horizon as a strange, roaring sound echoes across the battlefield, neither the piercing whistle of a missile nor the thunder of a traditional bomb. Ukrainian air defense crews look toward the sky and watch something unusual cutting through the air, a crude, heavy object shaking as it flies, powered by what looks like a small jet engine attached to the side of an old Soviet bomb. This bizarre development marks one of the most unusual and desperate phases of the conflict yet. It signals a major shift in the tactics being used by Russia as it begins flooding Ukraine with low-cost, improvised weapons meant not to shock with sophistication, but to overwhelm with sheer numbers. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Conflict Front Stories channel. Please subscribe and like my videos as we dive deep into what these strange weapons mean, why they're appearing now, and how they're reshaping the battlefield in unexpected ways. The story begins far from the front lines, inside workshops, industrial plants, and converted factories across Russia. As the conflict drags on, Russia's arsenal of precision, guided missiles has faced serious pressure. Western analysts estimate that while Russia produces new missiles every month, the rate of consumption remains far higher. Sanctions have made acquiring advanced components more difficult, and Russia has had to get creative. This creativity has taken the form of improvised glide bombs, repurposed aviation munitions, and now, crude jet engine-equipped bombs that look like something out of a military museum crossed with a mechanic's garage. Engineers bolt on wings, weld metal frames, attach basic guidance kits, and use small jet engines typically found on training aircraft or heavy drones. The result is a weapon that can travel farther than its original design intended, giving Russian aircraft the ability to strike Ukrainian territory from safer distances. These improvised weapons may look unstable, and in many ways they are, but they represent a powerful idea. Quantity can be just as disruptive as quality. Ukrainian air defense crews now face waves of cheap devices that fly low, fly irregularly, and force defenders to respond. Even if one weapon malfunctions, another may still hit something important. This becomes a battle not of single strikes, but of constant pressure. Ukrainian analysts describe these bombs as unpredictable and noisy, often producing a growling or rattling sound as they fly overhead. They might wobble, dip, or change direction slightly because the components are not well balanced. But despite their crude appearance, these weapons still carry destructive potential because the underlying Soviet-era bombs were designed to deliver a significant explosion even without modern guidance systems. The improvisation simply extends their reach. Footage from the battlefield shows Russian Su-34 and Su-35 jets launching these modified glide bombs from dozens of kilometers away. Previously, Russian aircraft had to fly closer to the front, putting them at risk. With the addition of wings, navigation modules, and occasionally jet engines, Russia hopes to stay out of range while still delivering strikes. This tactic has caused difficulties for Ukrainian defenders because they must intercept objects that behave unlike traditional missiles. Their movement patterns are less predictable, making tracking and interception more complicated. Inside Ukrainian command centers, air defense operators continuously study radar signatures, monitoring incoming threats. The interior atmosphere is tense but efficient. Crews know that they cannot ignore anything approaching their airspace. When these improvised bombs appear on radar, the operators must make quick decisions: what system to use, which battery is closest, and whether the weapon is likely to impact a sensitive area. The problem is that using highly advanced interceptors against cheap, improvised weapons is not a sustainable strategy. A single interceptor can cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, while some of Russia's improvised designs may cost a fraction of that. This imbalance creates a long-term challenge for Ukraine as it tries to allocate its limited defensive resources wisely. Outside the command centers, Ukrainian soldiers and civilians hear the strange mechanical roar of these crude weapons. They sometimes travel at uneven speeds, producing sounds unlike anything commonly used in modern warfare. Residents near targeted areas report seeing odd shapes flying overhead, large metal bodies with crude wings attached, sometimes trailing smoke from the engine. These sightings highlight the unusual nature of this development. For many observers, the weapons are a sign of Russia's willingness to use whatever is available, even if the designs appear improvised or rushed. Satellite imagery reveals rows of old Soviet bombs being modified in Russian facilities. Some of these munitions have been sitting in warehouses for decades. By adding simple tail kits and guidance modules, Russia converts them into glide bombs. By attaching jet engines, Russia extends their range even further. Western analysts suggest that multiple prototypes are being tested simultaneously, with engineers learning from each strike. This rapid prototyping approach reflects lessons learned from drone manufacturers who often iterate quickly based on real-world results. The improvisational strategy reflects a shift in Russia's thinking. Instead of relying entirely on advanced systems that require complex electronics, Russia is embracing a hybrid approach. This includes modern missiles, mass-produced drones, old bombs, and improvised hybrids. By flooding the battlefield with numerous low-cost weapons, Russia aims to stretch Ukraine's defenses thin across large areas. The strategy also seeks to exhaust Ukraine's limited stockpile of interceptors. Inside Ukraine, engineers work tirelessly to improve defenses. They develop jamming systems to interfere with the basic navigation kits attached to these improvised bombs. Because the guidance systems are crude, electronic interference can sometimes cause them to veer off course. However, jamming is not always enough, especially when many weapons are launched at once. Ukrainian forces also rely on decoys, false targets, and rapid mobility, relocating their anti-air systems frequently to avoid detection and reduce vulnerability. Civilian areas also brace for the threat of these unusual weapons. Even when targets are military or industrial, nearby communities face disruptions. Power stations, warehouses, and infrastructure become targets as Russia tries to weaken Ukraine's logistical capabilities. The unpredictable flight paths of improvised bombs create additional stress for people living in affected regions. They must stay alert, even when traditional warning indicators seem unclear. Local authorities frequently issue safety guidance, reminding civilians to stay in shelters when alarms sound. Beyond Ukraine, global military analysts observe the situation closely. The introduction of improvised jet-powered bombs marks a new phase in low-cost warfare. It shows that even major powers are willing to adopt unconventional solutions when facing constraints. If these improvised weapons prove effective, it could influence future conflicts, encouraging other nations to explore cheap, mass-produced alternatives to expensive precision systems. Some analysts warn that this shift could make air defense more challenging worldwide. Russia's reliance on improvised weapons also reveals vulnerabilities. The fact that Russia is modifying decades-old bombs indicates pressure on its supply of modern munitions. If Russia had an abundant supply of precision missiles, it would not need to rely on these workshop-style creations. The improvisation, while effective in terms of volume, exposes gaps in Russia's manufacturing capability under sanctions. Ukraine continues adapting, finding ways to counter each new threat. Air defense crews train constantly, learning to recognize and intercept improvised weapons. Ukrainian commanders emphasize flexibility, moving batteries often, coordinating between air defense layers, and using multiple systems to compensate for shortages. They understand that the conflict is a long-term challenge and that success depends on resilience and resource management. As winter approaches, the significance of these weapons becomes more pronounced. Historically, Russia intensifies strikes on energy infrastructure during cold seasons. Using cheap improvised weapons allows Russia to conduct frequent attacks, attempting to disrupt Ukraine's energy grid. Ukrainian authorities prepare backup power systems and reinforce critical infrastructure to minimize disruptions. Each new wave of attacks, whether from drones, missiles, or improvised bombs, tests Ukraine's resilience. Inside Russian facilities, the industrial machinery of wartime production continues operating day and night. Workers weld metal braces onto old bombs, attach small engines, and assemble wings. Supervisors push for faster output, aiming to meet military demands. The process lacks the precision of modern missile factories, but it is efficient enough to create large numbers of usable weapons quickly. Russian military planners evaluate the results of each strike, adjusting designs, modifying guidance, and testing new prototypes. Ukrainian engineers, in turn, study the remains of intercepted weapons to understand their structure and weaknesses. By analyzing the components, they learn how the bombs are built and what can be done to counter them more effectively. This becomes a technological race, improvisation on one side versus adaptation on the other. On the battlefield, the use of improvised jet-powered bombs changes the rhythm of daily operations. Troops must constantly relocate equipment to avoid being targeted. Supply convoys adjust their routes to minimize exposure. Front line units remain cautious, knowing that unpredictable weapons may strike positions even far from the immediate fighting. Military planners revise their strategies to account for these new threats, coordinating with intelligence teams that track launch patterns and targets. The psychological impact of these weapons cannot be ignored. For Ukrainian forces, the unusual design and flight behavior add a layer of unpredictability. For Russian forces, the reliance on improvised weapons may boost production confidence, but also signals limitations. Many Russian military bloggers have expressed mixed reactions, praising the ingenuity but questioning the durability and reliability of such crude designs. International partners supporting Ukraine watch the situation closely. Policymakers debate how to maintain a steady flow of air defense systems, ammunition, and interceptors. The challenge is maintaining balance, ensuring Ukraine has the tools to defend itself without exhausting stockpiles abroad. Discussions continue about scaling production of affordable interceptors that can counter low-cost threats. This issue is becoming central to modern warfare as drone swarms, improvised bombs, and mass-produced weapons grow in importance. The evolution of the conflict reveals a broader trend. Modern war increasingly relies on adaptability. Large nations are no longer limited to traditional artillery, missiles, or aircraft. Instead, they experiment with hybrid systems, merging old equipment with new technology in unexpected ways. The jet engine-equipped bombs serve as a clear demonstration of this shift, showing how older hardware can be repurposed to create functional, if imperfect, weapons. Ukraine continues building its layered defense system, combining long-range interceptors, mid-range batteries, short-range mobile units, and electronic warfare. This layered approach helps compensate for shortages and increases the chances of shooting down incoming threats. Ukrainian commanders emphasize cooperation between different units to ensure coverage across wide areas. The appearance of improvised weapons also affects civilian morale. Communities remain strong and unified, but constant alerts and unpredictable strikes create fatigue. Local governments provide support, helping residents adapt and offering resources to repair damaged infrastructure. Despite the challenges, Ukrainians remain determined to continue their daily lives and support their defenders. Russia's strategy of mass, low-cost production is designed to force Ukraine into a constant state of defense. By launching frequent waves of cheap weapons, Russia hopes to wear down Ukraine's systems. However, this approach also risks diminishing returns if Ukraine adapts faster than expected. Low-cost weapons may not deliver the same strategic impact as high-precision strikes, especially against hardened military targets. They create pressure, but not always decisive results. Over time, the effectiveness of these improvised weapons will depend on how quickly Russia can refine them and how effectively Ukraine can counter them. If Russia improves guidance accuracy or engine reliability, the threat level could increase. If Ukraine enhances jamming and interception tactics, the impact may decrease. This dynamic creates a constantly shifting battlefield environment. Despite Russia's attempts to innovate, Ukrainian forces continue to demonstrate resilience and adaptability. They intercept a significant percentage of incoming threats and maintain control over key areas. They respond to each new challenge with determination, adjusting strategies and developing new defensive measures. The conflict is now a contest between industrial output and defensive coordination. Russia's improvisation provides quantity, while Ukraine relies on quality, precision, and international support. The competition between mass production and targeted defense defines this phase of the war. As jet-engine-equipped bombs continue to appear, analysts across the world examine their implications. Some view them as signs of desperation, others as signs of ingenuity. No matter the interpretation, they reveal the evolving nature of modern conflict. Nations must prepare for an era where inexpensive, improvised weapons play a major role, forcing militaries to rethink how they protect their airspace and infrastructure. In Ukraine, the fight continues with determination. Soldiers face challenges daily, but they remain disciplined and committed. Civilians endure hardship but stay united. Engineers work to reinforce defenses and find new ways to neutralize threats. The country adapts constantly, guided by experience and resilience. Russia's improvised jet-powered bombs mark a turning point in wartime strategy, a shift from reliance on advanced systems to the aggressive use of low-cost creativity. Their deployment reveals strengths in adaptation, but also weaknesses in supply. Their effectiveness depends not only on design, but on how Ukraine responds. As these strange weapons streak across the sky, rattling and roaring, they symbolize a new chapter in the conflict, one defined by innovation under pressure, resourcefulness amid shortages, and the ongoing struggle to control the air above the battlefield. The world watches as this unusual tactic unfolds, shaping the path of the conflict in unpredictable ways, with each side learning, adapting, and preparing for what comes next.